Thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm joined by our distinguished panel here. We got Leonard Atchin, we've got Laura Brandt-Schloss, we got Kerry Brody, and we've got Neil Alacal. They all bring to the table a lot of really strong insight. I'm really excited about this panel, and let's get going. So before we kind of get started with my questions, maybe each of you can give a 1 minute background in terms of you, your organization, everything else. Leonard, we'll start with you.
Sure. Lenny Chan, everyone, thanks so much. Great to be here with you. I started my career as an ICU nurse about 25 years ago, medical ICU, and then went into leadership for the last 22 years. Have born and raised New Yorker in the academic medical centers here in New York. And I'm currently the president and CEO of Live On New York. Live On New York is a federally designated organ procurement organization. It's about 56 of them in the United States. We have responsibility for about 13 million lives, 100 hospitals in the 5 boroughs, Nassau and Suffolk County, Westchester, and the lower Hudson Valley. And what we do is work with families, people who've decided to give the precious gift of organ and tissue donation to those in need across the nation. We work with families, work with the logistics, work with the hospitals, transport throughout the nation to make sure that A, those gifts are honored by the people who've decided to give those gifts to the community, and B, that those on the wait list have a second chance at life by receiving those gifts. So everything from the moment of holding that family's hand to the delivery of that gift anywhere in the United States is what our responsibility is. Great to be here.
Super incredible and super cool. Kerry, you're up.
Hi, everyone. So honored to be on this panel with such incredible people. I'm the founder and executive director of Emma's Torch. We're a nonprofit social enterprise that provides culinary training and job placement services to refugees, asylees, and survivors of human trafficking. We have 2 cafes and a catering business in New York and a new cafe down in Washington, D.C., which serve as both operating businesses, but also where our students do their training before we help them find careers with upward mobility within the culinary industry.
So cool. Lauren?
Hello, Lauren Brandt-Schloss. I'm the executive director of USDAN Summer Camp for the Arts. I'm the 3rd executive director in our 56-year history. And USDAN, I hope some people on the panel or in the audience are alumni or parents of alumni or current parents of students. But USDAN, I'll share the mission. So it opens with, we invite people of all ages to experience the natural beauty of our campus and the transformative power of the arts. There's a little more, and then it closes with, our goal is to instill in our community the desire and drive to contribute creatively to the world now and for the rest of their lives. So the way we do that is primarily through the summer camp, but we also have a spring and a fall program now. So the summer camp welcomes about 1,500 students every summer, aging from K to 12, from New York City and Long Island. It's a day program, and the community is very diverse, not just in terms of age and art form, but also in terms of neurodiverse, gender, and racial diversity and economic diversity. We also welcomed 50,000 visitors to the campus last year, through our spring program and our fall program. In the spring, we rent the amphitheater, which is a 900-seat open-air amphitheater. And in the fall, we partnered to host the Rise of the Jack-o'-lanterns, the world's longest jack-o'-lantern trail. So hopefully others of you are now saying, wait, I've been to USDAN, and you didn't even realize it. The summer camp is 2 4-week sessions, and students focus in one of 5 arts areas and a few non-arts areas. So we offer music, dance, theater, creative writing, and visual art, as well as nature, chess, and recreation. And for 4 weeks, we're like a summer school for the arts. The students pick 3 classes. They take the same 3 classes all 4 weeks, a major, a minor, and a rec. And you can cross-discipline. So you can major in ceramics and minor in vocal ensemble and do tap for your rec. And where we are is really special too. USDAN's on 143 acres of rolling hills. We're in Wheatley Heights. Our gate is in Babylon and the property's in Huntington. So we're right at that intersection of Long Island. And the campus is technically owned by UJA Federation, and it's the ancestral homeland of the Massapequa, the Matinecock, and the Nisaquags. And it's an architecturally significant campus, which is also worth noting. We had 2 fabulous architects develop the property. Thank you.
Thanks. I actually feel like we should all be outside like Lauren.
And this,
I'm
I'm literally
jealous.
here. This is
I
not
am
a
like-
fake background, luckily.
I know, you can see the wind blowing. I'm super jealous. Neela?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Neela Mukherjee-Lackal. I'm the president and CEO of the EAC Network. The EAC Network is a fairly large social service organization. I could talk for hours about the work, but our brief summary is that we provide services in 5 pillars. We provide services for seniors and nutrition, children and youth, families and communities, criminal justice and behavioral health, and vocational services. We serve about over 60,000 individuals every year, and our footprint covers Long Island, the 5 boroughs, and Rockland County. And through our work, our focus is to empower, assist, and care for individuals by helping them navigate really complex systems during very challenging times of their lives to help them to lead healthier and better lives.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. So let's dive right into the questions since we only have so much time. So I think there's a lot of challenges that are facing the nonprofit sector. I think the workforce is changing. People are asking for more flexible hours. Market has become highly competitive. Greater focus on leadership, and in many cases, there are extreme staffing shortages. So if we can start, Leonard, with you, how is your organization addressing this?
Sure. So, Live on New York, just for context, Live on New York as an organ procurement organization, New York was not the best at this for decades. We were one of the lowest performers in the United States. So a team was brought in 2.5 years ago to turn that around. And just for the group to appreciate, there were about 210 people when this leadership team got here. And within 18 months, 170 of them were no longer here for a host of reasons, including tapping out, being tapped out, et cetera. So not only did we have the combination of the competitive workforce, but we also had the need to grow and change a culture within the organization to now become, which the government just let us know a month ago, one of the top performing OPOs in the country, which was able to get done. In that competition, we needed to be creative. I'll give an example of one thing that we did. Traditionally, nurses, and I'm a nurse, traditionally nurses entered the hospitals, the 100 hospitals that we work within, and work closely with the ICUs and staff and physicians in order to honor those gifts of life. We started to look at the workforce differently, and we said, you know what? There is a massive amount of EMTs and paramedics in New York City. And what they're doing as job category and classification is very different than ever being in a role to create an opportunity for them to step up into hospitals and work directly with patient care within the hospitals. And today, probably 60 to 70% of that entire category that were mostly nurses are now EMTPs, paramedics. So thinking creatively at the market, looking at it in an asymmetrical way, not really following the traditional rules per se of what we are brought up to believe or think of, who can do a specific job. And then looking at the regs, working within the law and understanding talking to the professional organizations to say, can we create a blue ocean career path for a group of New Yorkers that otherwise traditionally didn't look like that or who could do that role? That's one way that we've now grown into a company of 360 with increases of about 65% despite that competitive market. So we had to think differently about it. Could go on and on, I won't, but that's probably one of the more meaningful things that we did. And then working with the grassroots community, the paramedic groups, the educators to get the word out that this was now a career track and opportunity for that specific group.
That's great. Lauren, do you want to chime in on anything that you want to share?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I have a very different response too, so thanks for calling on me. I would say I'd love to focus on the part of the question around career growth and advancement within the staff. I think that speaks best to us and the work we've focused on this year. So we recently joined with TriNet. So TriNet provides a lot of additional support for us, including work around creating a talent philosophy, a compensation philosophy, and building the systems and structures to do that work. So this year, we really focused on creating some transparency and some clear statements around career growth. And now we'll work on making the actions happen beyond that. So just a couple examples of statements that we now have. like around in our talent philosophy around behaviors. We can now say how fully a staff member's behaviors are aligned with our core values directly impacts retention and career growth opportunities. So this is a small detail, but it was living this way. Like the more the staff was aligned with our core values, the more you saw them staying on and growing, but now we're making statements to articulate that. Or around differentiation. So staff who demonstrate the highest alignment with the core values and who deliver the highest level of performance are going to receive or do receive the greatest creative, collaborative, and growth opportunities and rewards. And also we are focusing on the accountability of our managers in terms of this work. And for us, managers are typically department heads, which we call chairs, not in all cases, but that the chairs are expected and they hire the lead teachers, and the lead teachers are a critical role. So the chairs are expected to always be developing a pipeline of new talent and then identify high potential talent within USDAN for these roles, that the chairs are responsible also for providing guidance and learning opportunities for their staff and assuring high levels of engagement among team members. So I give these as a few examples, but mostly what I wanted to share was this year for us was really about just becoming clear about a culture that existed and maybe systems that existed, but weren't that clearly articulated to staff. And it was very helpful. We honestly spent probably like 12 hours developing this many statements. So it was a really interesting exercise to really question some of the things that we valued and decide what stays in and what goes out. So I'd love to just share that because it was a great practice for us that might help others too.
I think one of the biggest issues that we're seeing out there is the nonprofit sector does not always do a great job of talking about what growth opportunities exist for their staff, especially their younger staff. And a lot of
Definitely.
staff don't realize that there's opportunities and they end up leaving the organization because they feel it's a dead end because that
Absolutely.
communication is not taking place.
Absolutely. And I'll layer into that, you know, the majority of our summer staff, it's not their first time at USDAN. They're either coming back into the same role, they're coming into a different role, or they were part of the community and now are joining as staff. And so one effort we're starting to develop, this is a big, exciting project for me because I love program design, but we're building something we're calling the USDANverse. And it's basically, it's focusing on, again, I'll use USDAN as the example, but we offer job opportunities really in 4 areas here. So arts creation, being an artist, you can be an artist and work here, arts education, you can be an arts educator here, arts production and arts administration. And we know from the work that we've done with our alumni that most of our alumni go into these 4 fields or philanthropy or some other kind of support for arts organizations. So what we're trying to do is build this USDANverse where there are these internal pipelines from students into these 4 career areas, and you can cross between the 4 areas. Like my job falls into a lot of these areas, and then building relationships with our alumni and other partners outside of the organization to help people transition out of USDAN to careers in the field as well.
Awesome. Neely, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I'll just say that, you know, in the social services sector, we are seeing a great demand for a lot of entry-level people. It's a lot of moving around. Oftentimes people will come and stay for anywhere from 1 to 2 years, which maybe makes sense for them personally, but we would love to really build that pipeline. And so our efforts as an agency have really focused on looking at retention, what helps people stay. And that, of course, includes exactly what you were talking about, both Lauren and Lenny, just that pipeline and those opportunities for growth. It's a little complicated sometimes because there's not always open positions in upward mobility like that are directly vertical, right? So we're a fairly large organization. We try to make sure that all of our employees know when there are positions available. We send out job postings every Friday afternoon. You know, we have our intranet where we share this information. And last year we started a strategic plan. And as part of that, we are building in the things that we think that we've heard or that we're still hearing that people want. right? What are the things that will make people stay? It's not just money, but money is very important. So trying to address money issues, but also trying to address culture and building a sense of community and helping people really, as part of, Lauren, you just said this, aligning people to the mission, to the vision and the values of the organization is so important, right? So that people understand how their role fits into making a difference in our communities, and really being very mission forward has been, I think, important and helpful for us. I think that the workforce issue is super challenging. We have many, 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 many open positions. If anybody's looking, we are hiring. And, we are really looking at building a community, right? And so I'm going to talk about community probably a bunch of times today, but helping to build that sense of place for the people who work at EAC Network, to not just feel like they're doing good work, but feeling seen, feeling like they matter, that their role matters. And so putting a lot of work into that.
I love the fact that you're thinking about employees and everything through your strategic plan. So that's awesome. The other statistic, I'm an accountant, so I apologize. I have to talk about statistics. The other statistic to throw out there is the turnover rate in nonprofit organizations is about 19% versus the rest of the world, which is about 12%. So that's, again, another challenge that we have to face. And some of that is, as Neely, you said, you have to get the benefits and the pay up to something that's appropriate. But also it's the opportunities and the perceived opportunities. Carrie, do you want to add anything, or should I jump on to the next question, give you an opportunity at the next question?
You can jump on to the next question. Those are second everything everyone said.
So my next question is really from a leadership perspective. I mean, we're in an interesting time these days where, you've got 4 different generations that are in the workforce today. A lot of leaders today have learned their skills from the people who led them. And a lot of those leaders were older, baby boomers and stuff. So now you're in a situation where you've developed a leadership style, and maybe that leadership style doesn't really work anymore in terms of dealing with the next generation of employees. What are you guys doing to maybe bridge some of that gap in terms of leadership, in terms of working with the next generations? Carrie, so since you didn't get a chance on the first one, sorry that you get the first on this.
Awesome. I love this question because it's one that we talk about as a team a lot, because I wouldn't just say, frankly, I feel like we're always living in unprecedented times. I would love to live in precedented times, because it's not just that we have these 4 generations in the workforce. We're also all still coming out of a once in a lifetime experience, hopefully once in a lifetime experience of the pandemic, which was experienced remarkably differently by everyone. And so we have people joining our team who graduated college during the pandemic, who have never worked in an office before. We have people who, we had our doors open because we're in the restaurant industry. So like that experience of going to work with that level of uncertainty. And so rather than thinking about it purely on a generational, and in some ways those generational divides can become caricatures, right? Like, I'm a millennial. I've read every article about the millennials who don't want to work. And now I'm seeing that we just replace the word millennial with Gen Z, and we do the same. You can vilify a generation, but instead thinking about how do we create a culture that's conducive to work? For us, one of the big things that's been good, I think, across generations, is focusing on this idea of our workplace has a culture of work, and that we are a team. We are not a family. And so we want to create an environment where everybody can show up as their full selves, be celebrated in that way, and to find the fulfillment in the workplace that allows them to also have fulfillment outside of the workplace. I think that one of the big learnings for us has been that if we try and be a family, if we try and provide everything for everyone, then it becomes very difficult to provide feedback. It becomes very personal if somebody makes a mistake. And I think that that's been a big learning for us, and we're continuing to learn throughout this process.
Lauren, you want to add anything to that?
Carrie, that was great. I think I'll just add one thing, which is I've done a bit of work myself in adaptive leadership training and adaptive plan. USDAN has done some work in adaptive planning. And I feel like that approach is really appealing to leaders in lots of different generations. And there's a whole bunch of principles around adaptive leadership, but I printed one slide because I think it just resonates. I did my training with EMC Arts. They focus on arts organizations, but Ron Hafetz has done a lot of work around adaptive leadership. But I feel like this point here resonates a lot across the generation. So thinking of yourself as a leader who's not a competitive hero, because for me, thinking about this generational shift, when I think of older generations or earlier generations' views of leadership, I think the idea of the competitive hero, like the superstar savior hero of the organization. And I feel like the philosophy of adaptive leadership resonates more to not only the reality of being a leader, but also to people in younger generations, which is the leader is the collaborative host. And I feel like that's an easy idea for people of lots of different generations to understand, because collaborating and hosting and bringing people together is a bit easier to embrace when you feel like you're an emerging leader and not necessarily such a skilled leader. So I wanted to share that point. And then I feel like the other concept from adaptive leadership that I bring up a lot in our conversations at USTAN is, as leaders, one of our jobs is to, I always want to find a positive way to say this, so this is a negative way, I apologize, but disappoint people at a rate they can handle. So it's like, we know what we need to do in our role, and revealing that immediately to our teams or our community can be too much. So as leaders, and again, across the generations, I find that people are really skilled at doing this, just like messaging at a rate and in a way that your team can handle. So I just wanted to share those two things because I found they're resonating really well with the young leaders in our organization, disappointing people at a rate they can handle, and also really thinking of yourself not as the leader hero, but as the leader who's the collaborative host.
One of the things that we've seen is that people rally around leaders these days more than they're rallying around organizations. And that's part of it too. So you really need that strong leadership to be the glue that keeps everybody to the organization. Leonard or Neela, either of you want to chime in and add anything?
Yeah, sure. Just Carrie, loved what you said. Both I through my career suffered through and transitioned through the difference between family and team, and through different organizations. The confusion around that creates chaos when you do one or the other the wrong way. We take the same philosophy there. And Lauren, collaborative host, I think absolutely right. The leader today across generations has to be an anthropologist, they've got to be a diplomat, they've got to be a communicator, a translator, and a collaborator. And they've got to be able to stand in the middle of that and bring all of these cultures, nomenclature, language together to help people understand, no, that's not what they meant this. No, they weren't offending you, they actually meant X, Y, Z. Neela, you mentioned strategic plan, and for us, one of the things that has been helpful for me is clearly communicating that we have a strategic plan, not just at the board level, right? And at the executive level, but we have a roadmap. This is what it is. This is how it aligns. This is what our plan is. And each of you own a piece of that. You understand it. So there's a common goal aligned with mission. And that's the glue that brings people together, and being consistent about it. So through my entire career, I've watched so many 3-year strategic plans that turn into 1 year, 1.5 year, 9-month, or 8-year. I've rarely seen a plan executed. And I've also rarely seen a board bring in a new leader and say, we agreed with that last strategic plan, you should continue it. It's like, what happened? You approved the plan, new leader came in, new plan, and there's just a vicious cycle of what people believe is going to a destination, expending calories, and they realize they were on a stationary bike and they've actually gone nowhere. So putting together a plan, putting together a roadmap, and then moving that top down and bottom up through an organization has helped to create a language for us where we could at least meet each other to the 50% mark and understanding common goals. That's been helpful as we've been in a turnaround and building a plane in mid-flight. It's been really hard. We're learning every day and making mistakes every day, but being able to constantly communicate with frequency and repetition around why we exist, what we're doing, and that we're continuing through that plan on course has helped with those generational differences.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a different question to you. So we've talked a little bit about labor, leadership issues. What other significant issues, risks, and stuff are you currently seeing out there and that you guys are grappling with over at your organization?
So I would say one of the things that has been really a topic of conversation for us, besides obviously the workforce issues that sort of permeate so many things, one of them is, you know, we're coming out of the pandemic. Costs have risen substantially. We're a very contract heavy organization, and our contracts are not necessarily adapting to the economic conditions that we are living in. And so we are trying so hard to find savings here and savings there so that we can properly compensate people, so that we can pay our rent, pay our expenses. And so I think that this issue of really making that case of the economic conditions have changed, and the services that an agency like mine, a social service agency that is providing services to people across the region, oftentimes on behalf of the government and our systems that are in place to make sure people are okay, we're having a hard time serving as many people as we used to, right? With the same levels of funding. And so I think that you know, funding is always a challenge, right? It's hard to sort of say, hey, this is the moment where it really matters the most. It's always something that we talk about, but I think that there is some kind of a reassessment, reevaluation we need to make, because people can't survive. Well, you know, we were talking about workforce. People are changing jobs to make an extra $2,000 a year, right? And so that $2,000 in your pocket feels much more important than any other benefit or, you know, benefit down the road, perhaps, that an agency might provide. So I think that really coming to terms with that, working together as a community, I think, to really make that case, to really ensure that our people who are working in nonprofit organizations are not making those kinds of life sacrifices because they're not getting paid, you know, for the same quality of work that they are providing for people, right? So it speaks a little bit to our values.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges, we talked about it earlier this morning, is that inflation's up 22% in the last 3.5 years, and rate increases have not kept pace with that. And
Not at all.
That's the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with all the same issues Neil is facing. I would say in the health vertical and logistics vertical, trust is a big thing that we continue to grapple with, right? Coming out of COVID, working at the community level with the staff level, who's a part of our community, and up and down through that, you know, continuing to establish trust in the healthcare community and the community broadly has been something that's tough. Obviously, the competitive market, inflation, all of that. And then with all of those things that have happened, at least in our direct market, the changing regulatory landscape as well. Keeping up with that on top of everything that everybody's been talking with is an entire other company within a company that you have to just keep up with that.
Carrie, you want to chime in on anything?
Yeah, I think that one thing that I appreciate from Neela is, like, there's kind of this version of the world where, like, we know that inflation is up, but somehow we expect nonprofits to do more with less, because for all of us, I don't want to make assumptions, but I am going to make an assumption. Like, we're all seeing a higher level of need than we've seen previously. And this idea that we should be able to meet that need, but somehow exist in a different economic framework is really problematic. And so we have not cracked the code, but something that we've been really pushing on is this idea of, there are a lot of, you know, if we want to have a race to the bottom for inexpensive solutions, that is an incredibly expensive way to not solve a problem. And so we've been trying to impress upon people that our program is an investment. It is an investment that operates in the same economy as everybody else. So the costs are going up, but it can be a long-term solution. And this is what it looks like in terms of return on investment for philanthropic giving. One study that we're working on right now is, what is the social return on investment? So we look already at like how many dollars our students end up then putting back into the economy in terms of tax payments. But we're also looking at what's the social return on investment by helping individuals in this way. It's not perfect, and I will say that like we struggle with that. But I do think that the change in the economic landscape is something that we just need to be really firm on, that like this is how we are all operating.
Yeah, I think part of it is also refocusing how you look at your donors and look at them more as partners or investors, as you're talking about, and trying to get them, or trying to better understand what it is they're looking from your organization so that you can develop a more meaningful relationship.
Echoing the cost challenge. And all of us, I imagine, even listening, are in organizations that are very dependent on the beautiful asset of human beings. And I remember early on working here, someone turned me on to Baumol's economic theory, but basically in the 60s, he started to project that industries that couldn't use technology to play the role of humans were going to get too expensive to be supported by any form of market economy. So I imagine we're all living the results of that, because so many of our expense lines are going to pay people, and people cost more and more, and they should, because we deserve it. So I wanted to echo that. Personally, I've been trying to educate myself more on alternative ways to think about relationships, and not just through the market. So I've been doing a little more reading and learning around the gig economy. So that's just one way we're trying to think about. Yeah, we did some more research too on thinking about other ways people could give for tuition. We haven't implemented any new ways yet, but just really trying to think outside the market, because the market is causing us so much stress on our bottom line. And besides cost, just a couple things I'll mention. For us, for sure, climate change is a big issue, between the smoke that we now have, emergency preparedness around, devastating storms like last night. We opened on Monday. That just set us back a lot, the work we had to do on campus this morning because of last night's storms. And then, just other issues around heat with climate change. So definitely climate change coupled with an aging, physical infrastructure, not the natural environment being aging, but the facility itself. And I would say just the third thing that's really true this year is expression of political and religious beliefs in our community, and taking the time to develop great clarity around what's permitted and not permitted in terms of what our staff, our guest artists, and our students can express while they're part of this community, what they can't, and what our systems are for addressing deviations from that. That's been a lot of our energy going into this year's preseason, and it's been work really worthwhile doing, because a lot of it was clarifying implicit policies and also taking explicit policies and putting them in plain language, and having difficult conversations with colleagues as needed. And part of that's strategically preventative, so that we don't get into a hostile and competitive environment this summer. But it's also just out of respect and creating a kind of standard for what our community expectations are around what's going on in the outside world and how it affects the bubble that we get to live in here at USDAN in the summer.
There were a couple of things, Lauren, that you brought up. One of them, there's a lot of things you brought up, but a couple of them I want to kind of comment on. First one is you talked about your aging infrastructure, a lot of organizations are focused, because they have to be with the shrinking dollars. They're focused on, how do I make my budget? How do I make my budget? But unfortunately, they're not focusing on the capital outlay that they have to deal with in terms of aging structures and everything else. So again, something that you need to be focusing in on as a nonprofit organization in terms of developing a capital budget in terms of, in addition to your regular budget. And then the other thing you talked about, technology to create efficiencies. And I think that kind of leads to our next question. We talked a lot today over the course of the conference about AI. Have your organization started looking at AI, implementing AI, and trying to find ways that you can maybe increase capacity utilizing AI? Who wants to take that one? Neela, you look like you're ready. Yeah.
I'll jump in and just say, I personally am a little fascinated by AI, right? It's not my sort of way of thinking, so I'm very curious about it. We've definitely been playing with it a little bit in terms of when we were building our strategic plan, trying to help us really think about how to lay things out, how to think a little more broadly. It was helpful, although it wasn't key for us at the time while we were using it. We are using it around fundraising and writing grants, certainly doing research, information gathering, helping to get information about other programs and practices across the country and the work that we're doing that is evidence-based and replicable for that matter. So those kinds of really on the front end of it, we are open to looking at it more broadly. We are building out more IT capacity for us. When I say that, I mean to become a little bit more, maybe to get to 2020. We just caught up to 2014 technologically. We're making progress. So maybe seeing if it's helpful for us in that space as well. So.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that a lot of the software you're using is building AI into it to create better operations, efficiencies, and stuff like that. And I think you are going to see some instances, going back to Lauren, your comment, where AI will be able to do some of the lower end tasks, which will allow you to elevate your staff so that your staff are able to do more meaningful stuff, get paid maybe a better wage for that more meaningful stuff because AI is handling some of the more rudimentary tasks. Leonard, do you want to dive in on this?
Yeah, so in our world, at least at Live On, I've done some AI models and machine learning in the past in the academic medical centers. It's really time consuming, right? People often forget that AI comes from HI, right? Human intelligence, and that, you've got to train those models. You've got to take experts who are going to annotate and build on that. So if we're talking about niche markets or like in the healthcare industry and what we do, it's extremely risky for us in a recertification year to invest time in pulling our technical experts out to invest the time in teaching those models, right? The AI is the output side of it, but there are thousands of hours required up front to do that right and reduce that to a meaningful and statistically significant product, if you will. So buying, augmenting back office operations, low risk things, yes, thinking about it, implementing it, and then pulling people from the workforce, considering everything we're talking about today, trying to find staff, not being able to afford staff, competing for staff, and being able to take the high frequency staff out who would then train those models, we've decided not to do anytime yet. The other thing is we want to make sure that we've got the recipe right. And if we're going to build things or release things into the market, we don't want to hurt people. That's on the more innovation side of it. But from a vendor side of it, yes, looking at things like you said, Ken, as far as back office stuff that's low risk, yeah, looking at that. But that's a really big decision that we've sat down and discussed to stay out of it for now.
Lauren, Carrie, either of you want to chime in on this topic?
We're in the same boat.
Okay, so Carrie, then, what do you see as some of the major trends happening in the nonprofit sector now that maybe will carry over into next year?
Yeah, I think that we're in an interesting moment. I think that to Lauren's point, we are also navigating, we're in an election year, we work in the refugee space, just making sure that we kind of are keeping abreast of that and also keeping an eye on where funding is going, especially in an election year, especially in a year where refugee resettlement in the cities where we operate has been like a very politicized issue. And so one of the trends that we don't have like a clear visual into, but we know that like election years just operate differently than other years. And so we want to be mindful of that. And more and more our funders are asking us for what are our contingency plans for either reality, like not expressing I saw that in the chats, like nobody's expressing a political opinion, but as an organization that works with refugees and new arrivals, being prepared for for any set of policies that might come as a result of November is one thing. The other thing that I've been kind of fascinated by is I feel like there have been moments of trends in reporting, and I tend to lean pretty hard into the quantitative metrics evaluation side that's been, for lack of a better word, trendy for the last little bit. But more and more we're seeing trust-based philanthropy as a model that funders are more excited about, not in government contracting or anything like that, but more and more that's what we're hearing about. And so we're trying to ensure that while we've we have like a buttoned up, clear theory of change and data management system. We're also having more open partnership-based conversations that give space for this trust-based philanthropy to thrive.
Lauren, do you want to add to this? What are you seeing as the trends?
You know, I would say, and I don't think I can speak so globally from the nonprofit perspective, but maybe more from the arts and arts education nonprofit perspective, which is organizations are collapsing and closing. And it's a competitive landscape. And the message that we've been sharing internally and with our board is this is not the time to be cheap. This is not the time to retreat. If we're going to be here in the future, this is a time for us to grow and to be aggressive. And it's really just a numbers game right now. And then similarly, how can we use the network that already exists? USAN's 50,000 alumni approximately at this point, plus all those parents and former staff. So how can we use the network and the community that's been built over the decades to move us into the future? So again, I'm not sure how much this is a trend, but really about like using the resources that you have and the strengths that you have to carry yourself forward into the future. That's where we're leaning in as we watch, you know, really, and I don't want to say a dramatic collapse of the whole sector, but I'm sure people have seen a lot of regional theaters are closing, you know, the numbers are down in culture since the pandemic. Education's a very competitive landscape in general, and much more high need in terms of the need of those participating in paid educational experiences. So again, just really unifying around with the, you know, bringing together the community that already exists to help move forward into the future and not worrying so much about really competing where we can't compete.
Ella?
I will just say, I think that we've heard it for a very long time. I see more of a demand for it around collaboration between organizations and really sharing efforts and coming together in very real and meaningful ways versus on paper. Really trying to tap into the different strengths and niches of each different entity. I also think that for us, as an example, over time we've grown, and we're at a unique point in time with our at EAC Network. I came in about 3 years ago. We have a fairly new leadership team, a bigger, more diverse board than we had. And we had a wonderful board before as well, but just a very new period of time. And one of the things that we've been looking at is really building an infrastructure, sort of recognizing that we've grown without building some of our infrastructure. And so I think that this is a unique moment in time, again, coming out of the pandemic, for us to do that sort of evaluation and invest, as you just said, invest back into the agency and the organization to make sure that we have the resources, the infrastructure, and the foundation from which to continue to grow, right? But this is sort of that moment in time where we're reassessing what the social trends are, where do we need to be adaptable in our work, where do we need to shift our energies and our attentions, or what programs do we need to bolster. If we want to do all of that work, we have to make sure that we have up-to-date systems in place, and that we have the right infrastructure as an organization to be able to achieve the goals that we're setting out.
Right. So we've got about 2 minutes left. So we're going to go into the 2-minute warning, and we're going to go into the 2-minute drill here. So if everybody can, I'm going to throw out 30 seconds or less. What takeaways do you want people to take away from today's session? So Leonard, we'll start with you.
Sure. So about 2 years ago, Cerini Associates had us to the Imagine Awards, and I sat in a room, born and raised New Yorker, thought I understood what the nonprofit landscape looked like. And I realized how big and vast and amazing it was. And I would ask everyone to just support one another as nonprofits. Neela just said it. Think about how to collaborate. Think about how the cure for a lot of what we talked about today could be integration and support of one another. I felt amazed and so ignorant in that moment that I missed a lifetime of ways to help in every single slice of community. So look at that landscape and figure out how to help one another.
Awesome. Lauren?
Since we focused on leadership, I was thinking about how we're all so lucky. Those of us who feel like we get to work in the area of our life that matters the most to us. So most of the time we're in these glorious roles. And yet the thing I want to acknowledge is that age-old adage, heavy is the head that wears the crown, that sometimes we just have to do the most difficult part of the job too. And that's what I just want to acknowledge. It's not all glory.
Carrie?
I love both of these. I think the thing that I would add to it is the idea that in the hardest moments, that's when there's the most potential for creative solutions. And so this idea that things are figure outable, even if it's hard, even if it's not pretty, and even if sometimes that can seem like Pollyanna-ish, I do think this idea of if we come together, we can figure it out.
And Neela?
I think I'm just going to leave with the idea of collaboration, right? I really appreciate working with other entities and organizations. Yes, I also love figure outable. Everything is figure outable. And I love being a part of this sector. And I love that there is a whole group of us who are committed to taking resources and helping other people and other communities live and lead better lives. So very proud to be a part of this community.
And by the way, figure outable, the derivation it's a Brooklyn word. It's derived from, yeah. Anyway, so thank you guys. That was super incredible. Loved everything, and hopefully everybody got a lot of really good information out of this. I know I did, and I feel like I'm better off having sat through and listening to you guys speak. So that was awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody who participated in today's conference. Thanks for joining us. We will be sending out the recordings of this and all of the other sessions sometime next week. With that, don't forget, we're going to be sending out the evaluation form. If you need the CPE credit, please fill out the evaluation form and send it back. We can't give you the CPA credit without it. And for those of you who want to spend a little more time with us, we do have a kind of a networking session that's going to be happening over the next 20 minutes or so. So jump back to the lobby and join in the networking. So thanks everybody. And thank you guys. You were an incredible panel. So thanks.